An independent analysis of European defense capabilities and strategic policy.
The architecture of modern American air defense presents a distinct structural paradox. It has become increasingly visible in the fiscal year 2026. While the United States maintains the most sophisticated strategic missile defense umbrella in history, designed to intercept ballistic threats in the exoatmosphere, its tactical tier remains surprisingly porous. This vulnerability, specifically regarding the detection and tracking of low, slow, and small unmanned aerial systems, has forced the Pentagon to look outside its domestic industrial base. The selection of Saab to support the U.S. Army's mobile short-range air defense requirements through the monumental SHIELD contract is not merely a commercial transaction. It is a significant signal regarding the limitations of the current U.S. acquisition cycle. And, yes, it is a validation of a specifically Nordic design philosophy. At the heart of this procurement decision lies a fundamental divergence. It is the gap between the pace of threat evolution and the inertia of American heavy industry. For 2 decades, U.S. ground forces operated under an assumption of air supremacy. This allowed their organic short-range air defense capabilities to atrophy. The rapid proliferation of weaponized commercial drones and loitering munitions in theaters ranging from Eastern Europe to the Levant has dismantled that assumption. The U.S. defense apparatus found itself in urgent need of a sensor capable of distinguishing a small drone from the background clutter of an urban environment or a tree line. This is a task for which massive high-power ballistic missile radars are ill-suited. The technological gap here is not one of raw power. It is a gap of discrimination and mobility. These are areas where the Swedish defense industry has historically concentrated its resources due to the specific geographic and demographic constraints of the Scandinavian peninsula. The deployment of the Giraffe series radars, specifically the variants leveraging gallium nitride semiconductor technology, represents a shift in how ground forces conceptualize the air picture. Unlike traditional legacy systems that require heavy transport logistics and significant setup time, the Swedish approach prioritizes a high power-to-weight ratio. This design choice was originally dictated by the Swedish doctrine of dispersal. It requires assets to be constantly mobile to survive a high-intensity conflict with a larger adversary. It is a notable systemic irony that this specific constraint, born of Sweden's need to fight an asymmetric defensive war, has produced exactly the capability the U.S. Army requires for its expeditionary maneuvers. The compact nature of these sensors allows them to be mounted on standard tactical vehicles. This provides a moving umbrella of situational awareness that heavier American domestic alternatives struggle to match without sacrificing mobility. From an industrial perspective, the integration of Saab into the U.S. Tier 1 supplier network through an indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contract structure suggests a pragmatic recognition by Washington. It acknowledges that it cannot indigenize every critical technology in the necessary time frame. However, this creates a complex dynamic for the Swedish industrial base. The sheer scale of American demand has the potential to overwhelm production lines in Gothenburg and Karlskoga. While commercially lucrative, this volume introduces a strategic risk regarding the prioritization of deliveries. If the security situation in the Baltic Sea were to deteriorate simultaneously with a crisis in the Indo-Pacific involving U.S. forces, the allocation of these critical sensors could become a point of diplomatic friction. It forces Swedish planners to consider whether their domestic champion can maintain sufficient surge capacity to meet national requirements while servicing the insatiable appetite of the U.S. Department of Defense. Furthermore, the integration of these sensors into the U.S. Army's Integrated Battle Command System introduces profound questions regarding software sovereignty and interoperability. The U.S. maintains a rigid architecture for its command and control networks. For a Swedish system to function as a node within this network, deep technical integration is required. This process often necessitates a level of transparency regarding source codes and signal processing algorithms that defense companies typically guard jealously. There is a trade-off inherent in this relationship. Market access is exchanged for a degree of technological transparency. This could theoretically constrain the ability of Swedish engineers to independently modify or export these systems to third parties in the future without navigating the complexities of American export control regulations, effectively tethering a portion of Swedish innovation to U.S. foreign policy objectives. The operational implications extend to the tactical level. Now, the introduction of these sensors implies a shift in U.S. doctrine towards a more distributed lethality, mirroring the Nordic model. By distributing high-fidelity sensors across the battlefield on light vehicles, the force becomes more resilient to suppression. Yet, this creates a dependency on the secure data links that connect the sensor to the shooter. The efficacy of the Swedish hardware is thus contingent on the robustness of the American network architecture. If the network is compromised, the value of the superior sensor data is negated. This highlights the interconnected nature of modern defense systems, where a sensor is no longer a standalone tool, but a peripheral device in a larger cloud combat system. In the broader context of the North Atlantic Alliance, this procurement standardizes a critical layer of the air defense architecture, with Germany and Poland also integrating similar sensor solutions or considering related platforms like the Patria 6x6 vehicle family. A de facto interoperability standard is emerging across Northern and Central Europe. This commonality reduces the logistical burden of multinational operations and simplifies the sharing of the air picture. However, it also concentrates the supply chain risk. A disruption to the specialized semiconductor supply chains or the assembly facilities in Sweden would now have cascading effects not just for the Swedish armed forces, but for the fundamental force protection capabilities of the U.S. Army and key NATO allies. Ultimately, the reliance of the United States on Swedish radar technology for its force protection needs serves as a case study in the efficiency of specialized medium-power defense industries. It demonstrates that the constraint-driven innovation of smaller nations can outperform the capital-intensive programs of superpowers in specific niches. Yet, this success brings its own set of vulnerabilities. The challenge for Swedish defense planners moving forward will be to manage this success without allowing the strategic priorities of their largest customer to dictate the developmental trajectory of their sovereign technology. The balance between being a strategic partner to a superpower and maintaining an independent industrial capability is delicate, and the execution of this contract will likely define the parameters of transatlantic defense industrial cooperation for the next decade.